what's going on? How's it hanging? How's it happen? You guys know this is Kevin from the Chord Progression Podcast. The podcast inspiring young rock and metal fans to discover new music, feeling a desire to connect and feel accepted. Welcome to the show, everybody. We're in the middle of April, and this episode is all about diving into some great heavy metal with a lot of lore behind it, and just, oh my God, it is an immersive experience. This episode, this album, this band, everything around there. Can't wait to share with you guys. But before we jump into that, I want to thank our sponsor for this podcast, which is Phoenix Fitness. So yes, you guys know I love going to concerts. I mean, but by the time this aired, I just had got done with, 2 straight nights of Rise Against. And you knew I love every minute of it. But I'm going to want to jump into that mosh pit every chance I get to every concert I go to. And for that, I need to say mosh pit fit. So what's a mosh pit fit? For me, mosh pit fit is being able to go the distance at every show, from the beginning of the first band to the end of the last band, not jumping out of the pit at any point in time, having the stamina and the strength to go the distance and to deliver those hits and to take every single hit I want to and just live life the way I want to. Your mosh pit fit might be different. Maybe you just want to jump in there and deliver some hits, have a good time. Maybe you want to be, the Iron Man of the match like I do. And the best way to do that is you got to make sure you're hitting the gym. You got to make sure you're strength training. You got to make sure you're conditioning, all that kind of stuff, hitting those fitness goals or whatever your fitness goals might be to stay mosh pit fit. But you also need to make sure you're preparing and recovering right, because your body needs that in order to continue to work out, continue to go forward, continue to go the distance, and to stay mosh pit fit even before and after shows. So that's where Phoenix Fitness comes in. They have many different products to help you prepare and recover right post-workout, during workout, to help you stay mosh pit fit, yeah. They have different types of pre-workouts, both stim and stim-free. I use their stim-free stuff because, guys, I've got more than enough energy you can possibly imagine. I don't need any extra caffeine. They have different types of B-cell recovery compounds to help you absorb nutrients in your body directly after workout. Creatine help you build muscle. Different types of protein help you build muscle. Plant-based protein, collagen-based protein, whey-based protein. I use their whey-based protein, chocolate malt flavor. That's good stuff. Big man, yeah. And they also have different types of multivitamins. Literally anything you might need to achieve your fitness goals, Phoenix Fitness has for you. Our listeners and watchers on YouTube get 20% to use the code CPP20 at fnxfit.com. Link is going to be in the description of the podcast for you to stay mosh pit fit, yeah. So get mosh pit fit with me. Enjoy it. Let's go nuts. fnxfit.com. Thank you, guys. And now in our feature presentation, Andrew from the band Project 86 is here. Talk about OMNI Part One. The whole entire story behind OMNI, the lore, the immersive experience. Get ready for it. Yeah, you're ready for it. Let's go! Yeah. Well, ladies and boys and girls, listeners of the Chord Progression Podcast, from a band that started out back in 1996 and is coming out the brand new album on March 24th, 2023. So you're going to be able to listen to it by the time this episode released, called OMNI Part One. If you like that alt metal, new metal, post-hardcore, all mixed into one, oh my God, you're going to have a lot of fun with this one. And the whole entire lore and story behind this album, I just got to say this. It is absolutely insane, but diving deep into it, it makes the album so much cooler than I ever thought it possibly could be. I was enthralled with it every step of the way. But enough with me, gabbing about it. Let's actually get into it. So please welcome Andrew from the band Project 86 of the podcast. So Andrew, welcome to the Chord Progression Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Kevin. That was a great intro, man.
Oh, you're very welcome. Hey, man, you're making great music. I got to make sure that intro is great, grand, maybe a little bit larger than life at the same time, too, because you're making music that's making us all, think a little bit more and also feel fantastic, especially all of us in the metal community. So I got to make it grand.
Oh, that's really cool, man. I really appreciate it and super thankful. One, to be here with you today. This is like my favorite part of the day. And kind of my favorite part of life, like when you're dropping a new piece of content and you get to hype it up and talk about all the work that went into it and all the thought processes and such, and kind of sit in the feedback, and it's been very positive for this part one of this double album. So yeah, this is amazing to be able to do this with you right now.
Oh, I gotta say, it's also my favorite part of the day as well. No matter what's going on in my day, whether it's things are going incredibly well, or if I'm having the worst day possible where things just aren't going right, I can come back to my house and just be as dead as possible. Set this all up. Minute before the episode starts, I am just like, oh God, let's see if I can get through this. I see that little thing pop up in the corner that says, oh, like Andrew is here in the waiting room, and all of a sudden my energy just goes, let's do this. So I am super duper excited to have you here, especially when it comes to OMNI Part 1. And I gotta say, first off, when it came to the concept of the album, reading through the whole entire lore, reading through the story, and then being able to listen through the album and put everything together and follow along with that and see how all these different songs, especially from start to finish, how everything flowed within the whole entire scope of the story, that made this album for me so much more interactive, but also at the same point in time, so much more just full circle filling at the same time, just because there's so many different things you're talking about in that album, in that story, that relate not only to today, but that we've gone through essentially sometimes in the past couple of years. And seeing something like this happen does not seem that far-fetched with the whole entire backstory. It was something that was incredible, and matching all the different instrumentals, the vocals, everything put together. It was one wild ride, man. I was happy to go on that ride.
That's cool, man. Anytime you tell people you have a narrative idea or the C word, which is concept, you're running a risk of dividing your audience. It's a divisive idea because I think it hasn't always been executed that well. A lot of bands over the years and artists have put out pieces of music, albums that are based around a story or one central thought or theme. And usually what happens, for whatever reason, I don't think it's on purpose, and I just think it's a result of getting too focused on that theme. It's like the music takes a back seat, right? So the one thing we wanted to do this time around is make sure that the music was the thing that spoke the most. Whether or not you're interested in lyrics or themes or narrative, that is still secondary to the music itself. And hopefully people can just put on this record and listen to one piece of sound from front to back and really enjoy, every single one of these tracks. That's the goal in an era of singles, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where people add one song to their playlist and don't really dig into artists, don't really dig into lyrics, don't really dig into the concept of an album. So we're trying to, upend that a little bit or throw it back a little and give people something that they can listen to from front to back. But make no mistake, if you do have interest in lyrics or in digging deeper into something that's hopefully a little bit more immersive, that was the intent here with Omni. And this is part one of a double album. And we can talk more about that and what LP2 is going to deliver. But yeah, LP1 was such a piece of unique work in the catalog of the band, and sonically it represents a place that I've always wanted to go, and it's just a much heavier record than anything we've ever done before.
So first thing I want to bring it back to is when you're talking about the idea of the story and also the C word concept around there. I totally agree with what you're saying as well, because I've listened to numerous albums that have a certain concept or have a certain theme behind them, trying to tell a certain story. And yeah, it seems like at times, sometimes artists, they get more immersed into that story and they get so focused in on it where it's all about telling the story instead of actually making music around it that's going to enhance whatever story you're trying to tell or really bring it to life in a way you want to bring it to life. There are some bands that kind of take that concept and sometimes, put it to a certain use and really create this whole entire story by themselves. Maybe it's not based off of something, but it's something they create themselves and really just create this whole entire immersive experience off it. A band called The Gloom in the Corner, they released an album in 2022. I can't remember off the top of my head, which absolutely is going to kill me. But it was this concept album, just a whole entire crazy back lore story. And it was one of my favorite things from 2022. Or you take a look at a band like Ice Nine Kills with everything being based around the lore of all these different horror movies. And yeah, you could get more focused in on some of these different horror gimmicks, these aspects. But when it's all focused in around the music and the music is enhancing that experience, then these songs really come out. Then these albums really come to life and the music takes center stage in a world full of singles when a lot of times these concepts, they have more of these connective pieces. When it comes to Omni as well, being a little bit on the heavier side, I got a lot of that piece as well. But even on some of those songs where it seems like, at times we're really pushing the story forward a little bit, when you're listening to those, because there's going to be one that stands out to me, especially within the story, when you listen to it, it has more of this story-driven aspect to it. But it was the song I kept coming back to more and more based on the power that was put behind it, the connotations of the sound that were put behind it to make it seem more and more of a piece of art instead of just like a song to push the narrative from one spot to the next. It had this artistic vision behind it that really puts you, not only if you're listening to it in the scope of from front to back on the album, but individually in the scope of this feeling of you're kind of standing in a way where someone's presiding over you, presiding over something grand, and it's not going to be for the best. It's going to be something that's going to end up being for the negative overall. It has those like evil, more villainy connotations to it. And I couldn't stop going back to it. It was just one of the coolest things I think I saw from this year already.
Well, what track are you talking about, man?
Let me go down. I got to make sure I get down to it. It was Trust the Science.
Oh, okay. So that is like basically many would call that like a palate cleanser, like an interlude track. But when you actually listen to what's being said on it, like I showed that to a bunch of people and they're like, did he just say it? And I'm like, yeah. So interesting. I thought you were going to say a totally different track. Yeah. That was when we were working on it. We were actually, I was working with producer Bo Burchell. We had tried to do a couple of different things vocally where I was singing over this music. And we originally called that, you always come up with working titles for tracks. Well, I had this idea for like almost like a mixtape type song, like that had a bunch of different like weird inner like moments that don't necessarily connect together. And we were just trying all these different things vocally, and none of it was working. And I don't know, it was he or I or maybe both of us sitting there. I was like, why don't we just find something that kind of aligns with what we're trying to say here, thematically, and see if we can find something that, is very scary. That was the theme throughout the whole record. And if you were to sum it out, the one word is terrifying. Like, how can we make something that's terrifying? But not terrifying in just like a horror movie kind of way, terrifying in a way that we're tying in all of the things that are going on in the world and projecting that forward about 20 years and saying, well, this is fiction, it's conjecture, but this could happen, all of these things. If all of the events and the narratives in the world converge and stay on their current trajectory type of thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the other reasons why I really draw a little bit closer to Trust Science, especially being as more and more of those palate cleanser tracks, but why it stood out so much was because when it talks about all these different things coming in there, a couple of different things. One, it has that grander, terrifying feel, but it's not terrifying horror. I would say it is terrifying is more of like if you're watching a movie, it's that like suspenseful, thriller, dramatic movie to where you're watching it and that these things, these things are bad. Things are not going to go right. And this is the worst possible outcome. But as you're watching it and now you're finally seeing the characters in the story start to realize it and you're feeling that terror and that horror just wash over them. You're really getting that concept there. And another aspect too, tying it into everything that is happening in the world that could very well happen in the future. The other reason I really took to that too is because it's very possible like that. And when you speak in fiction can bring out a lot of different things in reality. One of my favorite books, I'm rereading it right now, is 1984 by George Orwell. And just rereading that and really taking a look at kind of the idea of looking at this different futuristic landscape from when he wrote it to the year 1984, kind of similar to what you're doing here in OMNI, looking from 2023, 2022 all the way to 2041, seeing kind of how that can work, putting these different pieces of fiction in there. Would things happen exactly this way? Probably not, but is it possible, and do the themes absolutely hit given the trajectory of the world and given the trajectory of the things that have happened and where we're going? It's possible that something like that might happen. You never know, but you feel that, and you can also relate to it in your own mind as well, especially for me, where things might not be going right in your life and there might be a piece or might be a person or might be an organization that's kind of in your way, and it's kind of you're seeing where that's happening, and now you have a chance to either kind of just trust them and go along with it and maybe just exist, or you have a chance to speak up, stand out, and move forward. So it has that feeling of like a juncture or a crossroads in life that you're absolutely facing. It can go many different ways, but it was just a thing I kept coming back to.
That's really cool, man. It's really interesting to hear you say that. I really was thinking you were going to name track 5, which is when the belfry speaks. Because the way that you were describing, I was like, oh, he's going to say that track. But yeah, that's really funny. This story or this concept was definitely birthed out of the lockdown era. Lots of time on your hands to reflect upon the dystopian reality that we were all living in. And very thankful that we've moved into a new season and into a new
Hmm.
chapter of human history here, and hopefully we don't repeat that. But I really have always been a big sci-fi fan. I've always been a very big heavy music fan, and also a fan of, I guess you would call it dystopian or futurism genres of films, of books, of shows. So there's a lot of itches I'm trying to scratch here, and in this being more of a metal leaning record, it's just the appropriate time to touch on all this stuff. And I felt like there's one thing I wanted to mention. A lot of times when bands write or artists write, a record that sort of has one theme or one narrative, the the narrative or the lyrics or the actual plot tends to hold sway over the track listing, the order of the songs. And we actually did this in the reverse. So I knew kind of where we needed to go with everything, but I didn't want to arrange songs not for the strength of just the music listener. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even if we would have had a totally independent song to song idea, like a typical album, this is the song where we would have ended up with just based upon the ebb and flow of the tracks. So we actually did this a couple of different times throughout our career where we released albums that had a narrative structure. And when we were doing those, at least the first time we did it on our third album, Truthless Heroes, definitely the song order and the song choice was sort of subordinate to the concept rather than vice versa. So we wanted to be intentional about that. This is definitely like geared towards bonus content or an immersive experience for the diehard fan without compromising the average listener, if that makes sense. I know I'm repeating myself, but I wanted to make that absolutely clear.
I mean, you made it clear, and it does make sense too. Again, we're living in a world today where music is consumed mostly in single format, thanks to how big streaming is, thanks to playlisting. There's so many different things there. So the album experience is something that isn't necessarily as prevalent anymore in culture, given how music is consumed. So there are songs on here that can easily stand on their own, that can be hit in that single format. But when you're listening through the album from front to back and you're actually getting in, there's so much more of an immersive experience that you can really get into, and you can follow along with the story. There's so many different aspects there where, again, these songs stand on their own. And I'm still going to go back to Trust the Science where, yeah, it does have, again, that palate cleanser style, but it still stands out to me more and more and more just given how it connects, how the emotions are put out there, the connotations behind the tone of voice that's used in the vocals in that one, the backing tracks is really bringing forward this like more sinister, that terrifying feel coming to the brink and just rising up. It's something where no matter how you consume this album, the quality is going to be there. It just depends upon, do you want to consume in a way that people are, if as a listener, are you going to consume in a way that maybe you're used to consuming, or a way that culture is used to consuming it now, where you're going to take a couple of singles here and there, get into it, and then maybe get into the album? Or are you an album listener and you want to go through this full immersive experience, so by the time this whole entire album is done through part one, you're sitting there thinking, whoa. See, I'm hoping for part two because this album was just that much fun to go through.
That's amazing, man. Yeah, speaking of part two, well, before we get into that, I wanted to mention a couple things. So we keep using the word immersive here. We're actually another itch that we've been able to scratch on this album cycle is delving into the animated video realm. And I've always wanted to do more animated type music videos where it's not just focused on the typical constructs of band playing in warehouse with B-roll footage of girl who's lost getting out of the woods or whatever, So
Yeah.
pretty girl lost in woods being chased by some bad guy or the demons of her past. Cut to band playing in warehouse or woods. So we wanted to stay away from that. So we actually have taken on the ambitious endeavor of creating an entire film using the music from LP1, OMNI Part One, as the score for the film. So we've released 3 music videos now that are small pieces of this greater animated hybrid live action thing we're creating, and it's, man, it's a lot of work, but it's turning out really cool. If you guys haven't, the listeners, if you haven't checked out the 3 music videos that we've dropped, please do go to our YouTube channel. It's just at Project 86 Video, and we're really happy with these. We worked really hard on them. The production team collaborated with myself to really make sure that the lyrics and the energy of the music is being brought to life in visual fashion. And it's just a completely different approach than what we've ever taken on creating visuals to go along with the music. And in addition to that, we have a fiction book that will be uh, dropped that will go along with LP1 as well. So LP1, you got the music, you got the music video, or I'm sorry, the film, the music videos, which contribute to the film, and then you've got the book. And then LP2, which you just mentioned, is actually 2 EPs. And one of the symbols in the layout is this triangle, this equilateral triangle. And what's represented there is at the top of the triangle is LP1. That's kind of the main sound, the main focus of the record. Then we've got 2 EPs on either side of the base of the triangle. One is a more digital influenced EP. The other is a little bit more brutal or metal influenced EP. So we're doing this kind of schizophrenic sound, but these are the 2 kind of pieces of influence that made OMNI Part One sound the way it does. So we've never really gone like full on metal, and that's what we're working on right now. I'm actually in the studio and we're doing vocals for that at the moment. It's really brutal, man. It's really fun. It's again something I've always wanted to do. And then the other EP that we'll be working on shortly, I say a more digital influence. It's not just like program beats and
Mhm.
synths. It's still heavy, and there are guitars, like a lot of guitars on it and such. It's just it's got a little bit more of that synthetic feel to it, I guess, especially with the percussive elements, the drums, and some of the other pieces of the puzzle that we're adding in there for sauce. But it's still all really heavy. But I think once we have all of it together, every type of Project 86 fan, I hope will find something to gravitate towards on this thing because there's a lot of sonic diversity within it.
I mean, I hope so too, because even when you're talking about these 2 EPs that are gonna make up part two, I'm hearing about this stuff that's heavier and brutal, and already I'm just like, woo! I'm already getting excited for this because that's kind of more my style. I do enjoy sometimes when you have more of that like synthetics, more maybe some of the more production style behind there, but I just end up gravitating towards the heavier stuff. So when you're talking about that, doing some brutal vocals, I'm just like, I'm already there. So when it's ready to come, I'm gonna be there waiting for it. But when it comes to that overall immersive experience, when it comes to a story like this, when it comes to putting it out, I mean, you're not doing anything when it comes to making sure that this isn't going to be out there. Like you're pulling out all the stops coming from a music video standpoint to create this animated style that's going to allow people to connect to each and every song and connect to the story as a whole. And for everyone listening, both audio and YouTube version, description of the podcast, all those music videos will be linked down there that Andrew just mentioned. So you can easily go and find them right there, making it as easy as possible for you. I do want to ask about the book though, because it seems like for something like this, and it seems like especially using an animated style for the music videos, is the book going to be something kind of like a graphic novel? Because it just kind of, that's where my mind's heading. Like, I feel like the book would have to be something of that nature to really pop, stand out, and really give that immersive experience a little bit more to something that we're looking through, especially connecting it to the music videos.
It's really not. It's really
Oh.
just a typical piece of fiction. It will be, a short to medium read, probably a couple hundred pages. Again, one chapter per song, and there will be a lot more to it. You'll get a lot out of the film, but the book will have just the most content, the most explanation, the most delving deeper into the world building, the characters, and the story. And it's, I have an entire draft done of it. And we're kind of working backwards because, I had this story all mapped out before I even wrote any music. I basically came to all the dudes and was just like, okay, here's what I want to do. And I had this picture, this drawing I did on a whiteboard of this huge tower. And it's almost like a symbol of technology, right? You think of like from the Bible, the Tower of Babel story. Like this is a, casting into the future reemergence of that idea that humanity reaches a stage of being united completely with technology as its unification uh, driver. You know what I mean? So it is a story about man's relationship with technology, and it all of human history and all innovation sort of culminates in this one city with this one tower that is both a symbol or a monument of everything that this company, Omni, this big tech company that emerges to basically take over the world, uh, all that they've achieved. And the narrative surrounds one specific piece of tech that they've developed that basically cures death and makes it so human beings no longer die. And so this huge tower that's created is not it has a clandestine purpose or a dark purpose behind it, but it's basically a resort destination. So people are gathering in Omni City to celebrate this mysterious piece of tech that's being dropped Apple style by Omni. And when the announcement happens that, hey, this is what we invented, it's an app that you install into by this point in time we have AI as a part of our bodies. You install into your body that gives you the ability to live eternally. And then there's a 1 week celebration um, in Omni City, specifically the Omni Tower, which is like a customizable immersive experience divided into 7 levels where you can experience everything from partying on the moon to being somewhere in ancient history, Rome, and everything in between. Because every surface of this city is like both a screen and a projector. So there's a lot of technology, there's a lot going on here, but really what it comes down to is man is using technology to cheat death, and what happened after that.
I mean, that's gonna be something that we really have to look into. I have read through the lore of it, and knowing where you're going with this as well. I mean, what happens when man is able to cheat death, and when man no longer has the consequence of his or her actions being death, where that is no longer a thing? What's gonna happen from that standpoint? But also, what is the sinister reason behind this AI? I mean, it kind of has these two different parts to it, to where, well, again, kind of going back to trust the science, when you're feeling that like terrifying lore come up once again, you're thinking, what's going to be the outcome from both the reason behind this, and two, what's going to be the reaction of people when they end up are able to download this piece of technology in the air, and the consequence of death is no longer a possibility. There's so much that could happen there, because what's human nature going to reveal? What's the nature of this product going to reveal? Where is humanity going to go with this now that, death is no longer a problem? Like, there's so much different things that can go on here. And the way you kind of took a look at it from when I was reading, going through the whole entire story, going through the lore, going through the music, it has much more of this terrifying, dark nature to it. But from what we have seen in the past, from what we had seen in 2020, to what we had seen with just people constantly going after each other for these slightest things, and throughout history as well, how people will go after each other, how people go after different groups just based on one difference in belief, difference of where they were born, difference of how they're born, all this different kind of stuff. The true nature of humans having more of this evil tendency to them coming out, it made so much sense in the whole entire story and the lore of it, to where this whole entire anarchistic feel just kind of happened at the end of it based on human nature.
And we're checking a lot of the cyberpunk and dystopian and sci-fi boxes in this thing. So, you've got your evil corporation, you've got your mysterious tech, you've got, the sinister underbelly behind the one world government and all that stuff. We tried to work within the tropes of the genre to still come up with something that was a little bit unique, hopefully. And this idea of having um, a festival, like Coachella or Burning Man, but much larger, basically involving the entire globe, both physically and virtually, to celebrate the ability to, live forever. Seems to me to be, something that hasn't been touched upon that much, in those genres. So I feel like while we've honored and paid homage to a lot of the influences over the years that everybody who's a fan of this stuff loves, we've been able to springboard into a more unique realm. Hopefully, that's been the goal.
See, when it comes to that more unique realm as well, for myself, I'm not the biggest sci-fi fan or really going into that. That's just not really where my interests really lie. But knowing some of those tropes, knowing some of those commonalities that you see in there, I mean, you did hit on those, but the one thing you said was when it came to that like ever-present celebration of a whole entire world, the whole entire globe, whether it's in person or virtually, that's something that's a little bit more fresh, a little bit more nuanced that hasn't been really hit upon. And I think that's just because, when it comes to, as time has gone on from when sci-fi really got its kick going, got started going, and really got those roots planted in there in the 50s and 60s. And now where it is now, we're seeing how the evolution of technology has come from, take a look at the 50s and 60s. The internet really wasn't even a thing yet. And now I can talk to you, over probably 1,000 miles away, maybe 2,000 miles away, instantaneously like this, and connect with you like this. And who knows where it's going to go in the next 60 years. But when we see something where, technology is that core piece and it is can be kind of suspect, this is something where a lot of us have more of this connection to, because we've seen how things have gone from, even take a look at the past 20 years, the past 30 years, the past 40 years, 60, 80 years, however long you want to go. A lot of us have experienced these massive changes in technology and our lives are not the same. So something like this, and this connectivity and how these things can go really awry, it has more of this realism aspect to it because we are kind of believing it due to the fact that we're going through those changes that might lead up to this. Like we're in the prequel to the story.
Yeah, exactly. And I mentioned that our third album, which was recorded about 20 years ago, it was also a similar idea insofar as it was looking at a world that was 20 years from then. And this is the kind of the next part two, sort of like the next chapter in that sort of look at man's relationship to technology and what it may and could do to us. We wrote that album right around the time of the internet really gaining steam, and right on the precipice of digital music and social media kind of dominating, pop culture. And I was just theorizing about what that could do to us as people, and as a society. And now this is taking a look at that next, kind of the coming to fruition of some of that. So yeah, I've been trying to touch on a lot of this stuff throughout my career, and I never get enough of it, both from a consumer fan perspective as well as from the artist perspective.
Now, I would assume, especially coming from, your third album, written about 20 years ago, looking probably would have been to right around maybe this year or last year, and now with OMNI looking again ahead in 20 years, when it came to kind of that continuation of that, not necessarily the story, but a continuation of that idea, I heavily assume that especially a lot of things that have happened in the past 20 years have come into that and have influenced, where the story was going to go, given the rise of social media, given what happened in 2020 with the pandemic, given a lot of the political instability that we've seen. I'm assuming a lot of that had to come into play here.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, everything on this end that's created has some sort of roots in what's actually going on in the world, or actually going on in my world, one or the other. Yeah, and while I'm not like a highly connected person in terms of the political landscape, like I don't hinge on every news story that comes out. I feel like in recent years, most of us have become a little bit more aware of what's going on in the world, and as I've done that, it's definitely played a role in the stuff that I've been writing and creating along the way.
And I think that's going to be a thing that, especially from my standpoint as well as the listener, but from other people that are going to be listening to it, whether it's, the Project 86 super fans, whether it's people that are going to be consuming it more single or want that full immersive album experience, it's going to be something that we're going to be able to better connect with due to the fact that you're looking at this stuff and you're becoming more aware just given over things that happened over the past couple of years. But we all went on a very similar journey with you as well in that aspect. A lot of people became more aware, especially in 2020 when the pandemic hit, when the lockdowns happened here in the US, when the BLM demonstrations and protests end up happening during the 2020 election, everything that happened around there, the focus was so much more in on that, where everyone became more aware of what was actually happening in the world. More conversations were happening, whether they were constructive or destructive. But when people can go in and go through OMNI Part One, go through the whole entire story, really get themselves immersed in that experience, there's going to be so much more connectivity in there based on how we have gone forward as people, how we have evolved over the past couple of years mentally, how we have taken and really grown our own selves to become more aware. We're going to see a lot of those things that we realized in those past couple of years. We're going to see parallels in this, or we're going to see parallels in the music. And we're going to be able to relate to those experiences, relate to how that music makes us feel, and give kind of a tangible, feeling and a tangible explanation of something that is really tough to explain or might be intangible at the same time as well. It's something that allows for that so much more of a connective piece to it that you created through a piece of fiction that so many of us can easily relate to, because, again, we all kind of went through something similar, not the exact same thing, but in terms of the overall emotions, a lot of them have a lot of similarities that are going to be present and we can relate to when we listen to OMNI, when we get immersed in the story, when we listen to the music and really take it all in.
Yeah, man. And as much as I love getting lost in concept and story, like I have to say, like making this record just from a musical standpoint was so much fun. It was so much fun working with all the people that I had the opportunity to partner with, a pretty big production team, a lot of collaboration. It was really rewarding to start from a point of here's what I imagine it sounding like, here's what I would love to do, and then getting on the other side of it and having the music finished and saying this turned out even better than what I expected. This is everything that I wanted it to be and more. And it's definitely there. It's an album where there's a lot of ebb and flow. There are some pretty long songs on the album. Our goal was not to write like 12 bangers or 10 bangers. It was more to like give you chills. I wanted as many moments on one record that would give you chills, whether it's the end of a song or a bridge, or I didn't want to just write choruses that people could sing along with. Not that we don't have that on here, because I feel like we do, but the goal was really to make you feel when you listen to the music. And like track one, it's a totally different type of song than what we've started most albums with. It's kind of a long, slow burning build that just keeps building and building and building and building. It's kind of like film scorey, very glacial in its progression, kind of. But it's one of my favorite songs in the album because it's just unique and it takes you somewhere. And it's not like a verse chorus thing. And it's definitely not just like an intro. It's a song, but it's just unorthodox. So going from songs like that to songs like, track two, Virtual Signal, that's more of a single feel. It's like a classic project vibe. It's a banger. It's like got a really driving beat to a ton of energy, but I'd have to say, like, where this album shines for me is when it goes super heavy. The moments where it just punches you in the face, it slaps you. That was just so satisfying for me because, again, I've been, throughout the history of the band, we were pretty heavy early on, but during the middle part of our career prior to this album, we were more of like a hard rock band. And this is a metal album. So when we got, for example, track six, Metropolis finished, which is one of the heaviest songs on the record, and I was jamming that on the way home from the studio, just getting with the rough mix. Uh, I couldn't stop listening to it. I had this huge smile on my face, and I was like, I can't believe we did it. I can't believe we did it. And it's not just about like down tuning and chugging. It's about making a song that like people are gonna like, that's a memorable song. And we've got a bunch of those on this album. I hope. I feel like. But that was a key moment for me, was when we finished Metropolis. I think it was the second song that I did vocally. Um, yeah, and that was our first single that we dropped as well. And I was just so stoked for people to hear it. And the funny thing was, when we dropped the video, one of the most common comments was, "Who's the guest vocalist?" Oh man, which I knew that was going to happen, because for the last decade or so, I sing heavier live, and it's actually a way for me to preserve my voice on stage, believe it or not. Uh, and I was like, I'm doing it this time around because, the sound warrants it. And when we finished that track, I'm like, oh, dude, people are not going to even believe this is me. And sure enough, who's the guest vocalist?
Who's the guest vocalist? Instead of Andrew Schwab, it's Drew Schwab.
Yeah, yeah.
Just
I
literally
need
just
I need a name. I need like a moniker for that voice. On our Patreon, we have a Patreon community that's really special, really vibrant, interactive community of a couple hundred folks who've been supporting this thing from the beginning. Uh, I've been referring to it as like the fourth gear vocal, because I've always had like the lower vocal, whether it's like melodic or like spoken wordy, and then like a shoutier sound that was kind of like my core sound, and then like a little bit more like screamy or like a raspy, sound. And then this is like the fourth one, which is like more just death growl, I guess. And the thing that I wanted to really make sure that I did in delivering vocals that way is, like, you listen to so many metal bands who have heavy vocals and you can't understand what they're saying. And I was like, is there a way for me to sing this heavy but still be totally articulate? Like, actually, enunciate words
Mhm.
so you can understand what's being said. Hopefully. So that was the other attempt, on the record, is like, okay, let's try to make these words intelligible, even though it's such a more brutal vocal sound. So I'm jumping around a lot here, man, but I'm just trying to get some insights into the recording process.
Oh, I'm loving the fact that you're jumping around with it, because even thinking about Metropolis as well. Yeah, I still remember, like, I'm looking through my notes on that one. It's just, oh dear lord, like there's just that heaviness that is there. And I think fourth gear vocal is kind of a good way to put it too. It's like that secret fourth gear that no one knew you had, where all of a sudden it's like, all right, fourth gear, we're putting it in, we're flying forward with it, we're having a great time. But like when I was listening to, honestly, one of the things that stood out to me a little bit more when it came to Metropolis was, it felt like there was like this dueling guitar at the same time too, between maybe a little bit more of this style guitar that had like this optimism behind it, that especially coming from the story, that this could be used for good. But then there was this heavier sounding guitar here that brought a little bit more of this anger to the forefront as well. More of this like pessimism instead of the optimism around there, that this evil that was feeling in there. And then when it came to the vocals, the heavier vocals from you as well, I do like what you said about them too, where you want to be able to enunciate and be a little more clear with what you're saying, because especially when you're trying to, really create the whole entire lore around the story and really create that emotion, if people can't understand exactly what you're saying, especially when it comes to more of that story driven stuff, we're going to get lost in it. It's going to happen. It really didn't happen here on this one, especially falling through the story, thinking about how this kind of relates to the idea of, the launch of that organic fission idea when it comes to humans being able to cheat death. It really kind of built to that. So I was able to follow along with it. So it made a lot of sense, instead of, hearing those deep guttural vocals where I have to go online, I have to look up the lyrics to just try and understand exactly what's going on. Otherwise, I'm going to end up coming up with something that is way out in left field into where are these lyrics actually going? Where is this song going to go? I don't know. And then I kind of think about it. It's like, nope, it was actually going this way. Well, it was kind of hard to hear when I hear vocals just go.
Right, right. Yeah. So it's like, how do we make them as gnarly as we can, but still like let you hear consonant sounds and words being formed? So yeah, man. It's funny you talk about the vocal. Before we went in the studio to record the vocal, uh, I got hit with COVID pretty bad. About 6 weeks before I was scheduled to start recording, and it was about a week into being sick, and I was starting to feel better. And I was in my car, and I don't know if you're this way, but I love listening to loud music in my car. It's like one of my favorite things to do. Like
Oh, I'm the same way.
I have a juiced sound system in my car that I invested in, and because I spend time in my car, it's one of my favorite things to do is just crank the music when I'm driving. So I'm in my car driving, got the music cranked, and I started singing along. And I felt something give in my throat, in my vocal cords, and like it actually really hurt, and in a not natural kind of way. So I was like, "Uh-oh, something happened." Well, little history. When we were making that same record, the third project record, which is we were on Atlantic at the time, and there was a lot of pressure surrounding that process, doing it back then. And uh, while we were about to record or when we were about to record the vocal, our producer took us to Vegas, and I ended up getting laryngitis. I guess it's just from something in the casinos or something we were in. We came back and I got into the vocal booth and I tried to sing, and my voice just didn't work. Like it would cut out and crack when I would, in a real weird way, when I would try to get into like a more aggressive sound. And so it was like, I'm sitting there, I'm in the vocal booth. He's like, "Oh, try it again, try it again." I'm trying to sing through it. I'm pushing harder and harder and harder. And then I felt something break in my
Oh,
throat and like literally into my neck. Like I felt the muscles like give way. So I went to the doctor, and they took a look at my vocal cords, and I had a vocal cord nodule that just got worse and worse and worse as we recorded and toured on that record and everything. It was a really nightmare time because in between tours and in between recording, I couldn't speak. I wasn't allowed. So I was going to speech therapists and voice coaches, and couldn't talk to anyone. It was super isolating. Finally, after about a year of that, or however long it was a long time ago, but it was a long time of just doing all that stuff. I finally said, "Screw it. I'm not going to do this anymore." And I was actually scheduled to get vocal cord surgery where they cut off the bump on your vocal cord. It was super risky because you can lose your voice permanently or have it altered if it scars or you don't take care of it the right way as it's healing. So I said, "No, I'm not doing that." And then we ended up going on the road after that. I just kind of said, "Oh, screw it. I'm just going to figure it out on my own." So over time, it's kind of a long story, but it leads up to this current record.
okay.
Over time, I always felt like my voice was getting more and more damaged. And I had friends around me and family members telling me, "Your voice doesn't sound good, dude, when you speak. And when you sing, it sounds gnarlier and gnarlier." And so I always had this idea in my head that, as I get older, I'm not going to be able to keep singing that way because my body just will not let me. And so when that happened, fast forward back to, COVID time a year ago or so, uh, and when that happened, I'm like, "Okay, this is it. I lost my voice permanently." And I put myself on voice rest for like a month, and it didn't get better, didn't go away. I did all the things the doctors and speech therapists taught me back in the day to do to try to get rid of it, and it didn't go away. So I did what I'd been putting it off for like 2 decades, and that was go back to the doctor. So I go back to the doctor. We're like 2 weeks away from going in to record vocals, and I'm literally going, "Okay, I'm resolved to the fact that I'm not never going to be able to sing again, and this is happening right now, right when I need my voice." So I go into the doctor, and they do the thing, and they put this like scope up your nose and down your throat, and there's a camera on the end of it, and they show a video of your voice when you sing. It's really uncomfortable. They did that, and then she shows me the screen. She says, "All right, take a look at your vocal cords." And so here they are right here. She said, "Actually, they're perfect. You just have a little inflammation in your throat from being sick. That's it. Just take some allergy spray up your nose for a week or so, and you should be good to go after that." Well, I wasn't ready for that. Like, I had made all these plans for a very long time around my entire life and the trajectory of this band and everything around the fact that, like, oh yeah, I'm going to be screwed at some point with my voice because I already jacked it earlier in my career. And so somehow it had gone away over time. And it's like I was given this brand new lease on life. And so when I got into the studio a couple of weeks later, I was like on cloud nine already, man. And then when I got in there and I started seeing differently, more aggressively
Mhm.
in this different sound, producer looked at me and he said, "Dude, I've never heard you sound this good." And I was like, it feels good. Like I'm not losing my voice. That was always my thing, is I always lost my voice really bad from singing the way that I sang. Like people always say, you have a unique voice and all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, but it sucks because it hurts to sing that way or shout that way or
Mhm.
whatever. And I know I'm doing damage. And like finally, through embracing this sort of like more death metal, whatever sound, I actually found my voice for the first time. I'm not losing my voice in the studio. Like it sounds awesome. And I literally said out loud, I was like, this is how I was born to sing. I finally figured it out, 20 some years into the thing. So it's better late than never. Here we go. Album number 11, OMNI Part One. People are saying this is our finest record that we've ever put out. You give it a listen, and judge for yourself.
That is, oh my God, that is one insane story. Like, I'm just thinking about that. The feeling that you probably had when all of a sudden the doc said, "Oh, it's just inflammation." I'll just spray up your nose for a week. Just kind of all those like ideas that you had, those plans that just kind of shattered. But it was like the best kind of shattering. Because you're like, wait a minute, I can do this. Like my
No, the
voice is
world was
fine.
spinning around me. Like I remember walking out of the doctor's office, going in the elevator, and getting outside the like hospital or whatever,
Mhm.
and walking to my car and like walking so slow because I felt literally like I was in some movie where the camera was like panning around me in a circle. And like is this surreal moment because you have to imagine 20 years of like ultimate singer paranoia because everybody who uses their voice for a living has that paranoia. I'm going to lose my voice forever, never going to be able to sing again. 20 years of that built up and culminating right before this album. I don't think it's a coincidence. I think that's definitely played into like the fun, the
Yeah.
sheer joy that I had making this music when we were in the studio.
I mean, you could tell, like, just while we were talking during this conversation, just the excitement that you had talking about this record, just the energy that was coming out from you. It came through like that. So the fun that you had on this when that moment happened, the fun you had recording this because now it's like that voice, you found your voice. It's not going to hurt. It's not hurting when you're doing this stuff. You're going into fourth gear and you're sounding even better. And you're not worried about that. That paranoia is gone because you lived that paranoia for 20 years and all of a sudden it was, you thought you were going to be done with it. It was going to be over with. Well, it's just a little inflammation. Just allergy spray. You're good. It's like, holy shit. And now you're flying on
Yeah.
cloud nine. I mean, it's incredible. And it comes through on this album. It comes through with the power. It comes through with all the different, with the range of vocals you're able to go with. And then we get to the two EPs when we get to part two when it's just going to come out later on. I mean, it's going to be even more exciting to see what you guys came up with there. The excitement is just growing through me in this aspect. I loved hearing that story. And it's just like, oh, I want more.
Yeah, the we just finished the first song for Brutality today, and when I hop off with you here, we're gonna start working on the next one, just kind of mapping out stuff. Our process is, get the lyrics going, and then we kind of do a scratch vocal that's just like talking the parts out, so you don't burn out, your takes or anything on just figuring parts out. So, that's the next thing that we're doing today here. But I can say that the sound, the lyrics, everything on this EP is going to be even gnarlier than what we just put out. So it's fun though, dude. It's like comical how heavy some of it is.
Oh man, don't tell me that. And I'm gonna be sitting here the whole entire time just waiting for when's it coming? When's it coming? When's it coming? Just looking every day. When are they bringing it out? When's Project 86 releasing that part? I want the heaviness.
So the goal is to get this done by June 1st and then drop it late summer, early fall. So you'll
Ooh.
have two, both parts of the album dropping about 6 months apart.
Ooh, now that is exciting. One more question for you before we send you on your merry way. What about bringing this album to the people? What about bringing this music to people? What about bringing this album to people? Are you guys gonna be going out on the road presenting this stuff to everybody, or what's the plans around there? If there's something that you can't say, don't give it to me because I don't want you to spoil it.
Yeah, we are definitely in the process of booking shows right now. We've got a couple festival dates on the horizon. We were booked for Furnace Fest this year, which will be really cool. And we're going to be booking more into the fall. The focus has just been obviously let's make sure that we get all the content done first. But now we're getting far enough along in the process that that's definitely on the radar. So we're going to be announcing dates and more dates into the fall and also into 2024 very soon. That's 100% on the radar, and we'll have to see what happens with LP2 and how we arrange our set, because we have a lot of songs in our catalog that people who follow the band are really connected to. So the thought of us playing more newer material is probably not, for the diehard fan, something they necessarily want to hear. But I think that a lot of this new music is so filled with life and energy, and really turned out so cool, that we're gonna have a hard time not playing a lot of these songs. And I really want to see what happens with Brutality and Digital, to see how those work their way into the live set as well. We're gonna end up doing like a 20-song live set.
If you guys can do a 20-song live set, I mean, you might have to do it. I hope you guys are going to be putting them position where you have to, because I want to see people want to hear this stuff, hear the new stuff, also hear the stuff they love, and make you guys have to pick between, all right, we get 20 songs, what are we going to all put in this? And there's going to be some that are going to be cut too, because you could obviously go with more.
Yeah, no kidding, man. No kidding. Yeah, I'm just excited to see how all this stuff unfolds. We have a lot of work left to do. We've only made 3 music videos, and there's 12 songs on this record, so we have to account for visuals for 9 more songs. So my very next call is to start storyboarding out some more of this, visual content. And gosh, I got to give a shout out to everybody who's worked on this thing. Everyone, from the video production crew, Spencer Olson, Joel Corpy, to collaboration. Everyone from Grayson Stewart to Matt Putman, Corey Brandon, Matt Marquez, production team, Michael Palmquist, Darren King, Bo Burchell. Man, huge group of really talented people have touched this thing. And more will touch it going into this second LP as well. So yeah, man, super stoked.
Super stoked, and I cannot wait to see what happens, right when part 1 gets released, when part 2 gets released, how everyone's going to take this stuff, and just overall just how immersive the experience is going to be. So Andrew, as we bring this podcast to its conclusion, one thing I'd like to do is give my guest, which is you in this instance, a chance to say whatever you want to say, plug whatever you want to plug, promote whatever you want to promote at the end of the episode. So Andrew, the floor is yours.
I mean, you can visit us at project86.com, and you can pre-order the album on vinyl, on cassette, on CD. There's tons of merch. The pre-orders will not be fulfilled until we finish the second part of the double album, which is what we're working on right now. So it's not too far down the line, but it's probably 2-3 months away from getting the fulfillment. You can also join us on Patreon. Again, the information will be on project86.com, the first page that pops up when you visit our website. We'll have information there and a link that you can go to. If you want to join us on Patreon and learn more just about the making of OMNI, we have almost 150 podcast episodes on there, all kinds of demos, actually exclusive music on there as well on our Patreon. So we've taken the Patreon thing to the next level. Like, those people just get like dozens, hundreds of hours of content, music and otherwise. So I encourage you to check that out if you're interested in learning more. And yeah, please pre-order. We've got several versions of the vinyl we're going to drop in terms of variants. We've got a vinyl box set. There's a lot we're doing. So if you want to support us, more than ever, we need your support. I know times is tough, but if you're inspired by what we've heard, or inspired by the music or the music videos, please check out more. And again, watch those music videos. We really stand behind those. We're really excited for those. Our moniker, our handle on YouTube is just Project 86 Video.
Well said. So now it's time for me to end this podcast with 3 specific things. First things first, go watch those music videos. Go support these guys. If you want to join the Patreon page, go and do that. Become a patron to Project 86. Go and pre-order some of those vinyls. Go and make sure you're following them on social media, because you're going to want to make sure you know what's going on. And when those live shows are coming your way, you're going to want to make sure you're a part of that, because you're not going to want to miss out on this. So what's the best way to do that? Of course, as always, I'm making it convenient for you. Go to the description of the podcast, say find Project 86 online. Links to their social medias, links where you can watch the YouTube videos on their YouTube channel, along with links to each of the specific 3 videos that are out now, where you can go find them online in terms of their website, where you can go pre-order the vinyls, where you can go get the merch, where you can go follow along with them and to make sure you know when live shows are coming out, and make sure you can listen to the album, stream everything Project 86 has for you. All the links are in the description of the podcast, or find Project 86 online I'm doing all the heavy lifting. I'm doing all the research. All you got to do is click the link. It'll take you right there. So now, Andrew, time is number 2 of my always how I like to close this out. And whenever I guest on the podcast, I like to make a certain promise as a way to say, 1, thank you for being on the podcast, and 2, I would like to support the band whatever way I can. It's something that everyone has hit on, and my friend, you have hit on it as well. So my promise to you is this. I don't like to start out with if. That implies this might happen, this might not happen. Nah. I start with when. It's going to say, this will happen. We just don't know a date or time yet. When I get to see you perform live for the first time, I will go all Liam Neeson. I will look for you. I will find you. And I'll make sure that the first round's on me.
All right, brother. Sounds good to me, dude. Thanks for having me on, Kevin, and best of luck with everything.
Oh, thank you. Best of luck with everything as well. Keep working hard. Just keep kicking ass. And number 3 is I cannot end this podcast by saying goodbye because made a promise to you. I will see you perform live. So goodbye is too final. So Andrew, I have to say, I'll see you later.
See you soon, man.
Well, folks, that was my interview with Andrew from the band Project 86, and now it is time for Kevin's final thoughts. Going through OMNI Part 1 was one hell of an experience, I'm not going to lie. Of course, when it comes to concept albums, or when it comes to albums that have a lot of that different kind of concept around them, have a different lore around them, I'm a little more hesitant on them naturally. And I do understand what Andrew had said about that, where when you think about it, a lot of times bands that do that, what ends up happening is, they end up focusing more on the story, and it's a little bit less about the music. It's more about trying to drive that story forward, and the music sometimes does take a back seat. Again, I mentioned the Gloom in the Corner on their album in 2022. We did interview Gloom in the Corner. How great that album was because it created that whole entire lore of the story, but it kept the music at the forefront. Take a look at Ice Nine Kills, one of my favorite bands. They're constantly focusing on the whole entire horror aspect, and they're going off the lore and the story of a lot of these different horror movies, but the music is coming first, and that's what made them stand out on the past 2 albums, including even Every Trick in the Book as well as the third. What Project 86 did with this one, with the whole entire idea around the story, really creating this immersive experience with the music videos, with what's going to be the book, everything around here, it's going to be something that you're going to be able to get into the story and just really feel through from start to finish. Of course, there's going to be songs like Metropolis, or there's going to be songs like Virtual Signal that are going to be more of that single bass driven style. But the one that stuck out to me again was Trust the Science, because it does push the story forward, but the way that the band was able to create this music, the way that Andrew's able to put his vocals over this stuff, it connects in such a heavy way, especially given everything that we've been through over the past couple of years, given the story behind it, how, we take a look at different sci-fi tropes, the evil corporation, the suspect piece of technology, but how we can all connect is because we're all more aware of things that are going on because of what happened in 2020, because we paid more attention, and now we're seeing more of the connections here, so we can actually kind of connect with this. Again, when I said this book or this story made me think about 1984 by George Orwell, I was not shitting you. That's one of my favorite books. I love George Orwell, but just being able to connect that to it and connect the idea behind there, it is just a fantastic piece. You're going to want to immerse yourself in this whole entire experience. You're going to want to hear the vocal range that Andrew has in this, because that story that he told about with everything with his vocals is nuts. Go back and listen to that, because even when you think, maybe after 20 years things can't change for the better, they can. I mean, take a look at what happened with him and his voice. They can. So this is something about being immersed in the experience, really being open to it, and just enjoying it every step of the way. If you do that, OMNI Part 1 is going to be something you're going to want to listen to over and over and over again. So how do you do that? Go to the description of the podcast where it says find Project 86 online, links for other social media accounts, links to the YouTube videos, especially the 3 specific ones that are already animated for the story now. Go to the website to pre-order the vinyls, pre-order any album that you have on there. Go and get some merch. Go and follow these guys on social media too to find out when they're going to be playing live around you, so you can go check them out, and where you can listen to the albums as well on Spotify and Apple Music. Description of the podcast, go and follow there under Project 86 Line. Also remember to follow us along on the Corporate Garage Podcast, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram as well. We're becoming more prominent on Facebook, but still we have Instagram there as another one of our major platforms as well. I think we're going to get back to Twitter a little bit, but TikTok is out. So that's what we're going to be focused on. You can connect with us on all the different platforms, message us. We do Wednesday live streams on Instagram, so go and follow us there. Also make sure you're following and subscribing to our YouTube channel where you can watch all of these videos for the podcast, and you can watch all of the shorts as well. You can also subscribe to the podcast on Spotify, Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Amazon, and any other place you might be able to do that. That helps us out, so please hit that subscribe button. I want to thank you for that. Also want to thank Phoenix Fitness once again for sponsoring this podcast. Remember, 20% off using the code CPP20 at fnxfit.com and say Mosh Pit Fit. Yeah. Thank you, Phoenix Fitness. Thank you, Andrew. This one was awesome. And remember, I'm going to keep getting that promise. I will look for you. I will find you. And first round's on me. Liam Neeson style. Oh, yeah. So on that note, that's going to be for today, guys. Thank you for watching, listening to the Chord Progression Podcast. My name is Kevin, and you guys know how I end every single one. So the big, healthy, and hearty. See ya! Yeah!